section. My turn. My turn. Bennett, up here.
What's that? I jammed my fingers.
We're on section 27.2, page 802. 27.2, page 802. How about pulling the blinds open so we get a little more light for the camera?
Oh.
All right. We're talking about invertebrate chordates.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Okay. Here's where we are. Up here. We studied all of these phylums already. Sponges, cnidarians, which are like jellyfish, sea anemones, corals. Flatworms like planarians and tapeworms. Roundworms like heartworms and pinworms. Nematodes.
Like rotifers.
Rotifers like rotifers. Mollusks like snails and octopus and squid. Annelids are the segmented worms like leeches and earthworms. Arthropods include crabs and lobsters and shrimp and insects and spiders and ticks and termites. Ants. Echinoderms, starfish, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, sea lilies, feather stars. Now we finally made it to the chordates.
But these are the invertebrate chordates.
The chordates are a big group that we're very interested in. And I have them all broken up here on the right side. This is not from your book. This is the AP book. But it shows the different groups that we're going to study over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And it starts down here at the bottom. We're studying these today. These are the invertebrate chordates. You may have never seen or heard of these animals before, but they're called tunicates and lanceolets, and I'll talk to them about them today. Tunicates.
Are we still in the same phylum, or is this a whole different phylum?
This is phylum Chordata. New phylum. Let's try and cut the comments. Please raise your hand if you want to say something. Today we're going to talk about Urochordata and Cephalochordata. Those are the invertebrates. And then tomorrow we start on fish. And there's actually 3 groups of fish: the agnathans, the chondrichthyans, and the osteichthyes. These are big names you're going to have to learn, which are the jawless fish, the cartilaginous fish, and the bony fish. And then we do a day on amphibians, which include frogs and salamanders. And then a day on reptiles, maybe 2 days on reptiles, which include turtles and snakes and lizards and dinosaurs.
And alligators.
Alligators.
Crocodiles.
Very nice.
And birds.
And then a day or 2 on birds.
And gorilla.
And then several days on mammals, which we are a mammal. So that's what you have to look forward to. These are all from the same phylum, phylum Chordata.
Okay.
Yes, Graham.
So the test over this is going to be on arthropods, echinoderms, and chordates, and that's going to be way after spring break.
Not way after spring break.
The dinosaurs.
Yeah, 26, 27, 28. That starts with arthropods. But it's just a few days after spring break.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. So this again, chordates are deuterostomes. Deuterostomes mean anus first. Echinoderms and chordates are all anus first. So, we start with the first ancestral invertebrates. Fossil evidence and recent molecular data show that the Amphioxus, also known as the lancelet, is one of the closest living relatives of vertebrates. Vertebrates are organisms with backbones. So all organisms with backbones evolved from this ancient chordate called a lancelet, also known as an amphioxus. And I'll show you some video footage of this guy swimming around.
How big is that thing?
That's about as long as they get.
Where would you find that?
They swim around in the oceans. Actually, in stream, freshwater, you find them.
Where? In the world?
I imagine they're everywhere, but I don't know that for sure. It's a good question. So, what are these things? Well, all chordates have 5 or so characteristics. There's more characteristics than that, but there's about 4 or 5 of them that we say are unique to the chordates. And here they are. They're all shown on this thing. All chordates have a dorsal tubular nerve cord. A nerve cord that runs down their back. Dorsal means down the back. It's tubular, that means it's like a tube, meaning it's hollow in the middle. I don't know if you knew this, but your spinal cord is hollow in the middle.
With fluid.
With fluid, called cerebrospinal fluid, that's correct.
I don't think there's that.
Very nice. The anterior end of the nerve cord is enlarged to form a brain. The anterior end, that's the front end.
So that little bulb at the end.
That's the brain of the amphioxus, yeah. It's kind of small. So dorsal tubular nerve cord is number 1. Number 2, there's a hard structure called a notochord. Now this notochord is a tough structure made of either cartilage or bone, and it runs down the back. And in us, we only see it in an embryo, and it changes form to surround the nerve cord and form your backbone, your vertebrae.
So it's like their backbone.
This is like their backbone, but in these, in the invertebrates, it never forms into a backbone. It stays just a hard structure called a notochord. The notochord is the hard structure, and in all vertebrates, it changes into the backbone during development. So that's where your backbone comes from, the notochord. You can still see the notochord in human embryos. But like I say, it changes and grows around the nerve cord and forms the vertebral column.
Okay.
Yes?
In human embryos,
Yeah.
we call it a notochord also?
Might as well.
I don't know if scientists call it that, but they probably call it the developing backbone. But that's what it is. What else? There are pharyngeal pouches. These pharyngeal pouches are little slits, also known as gill slits. And we see them in every vertebrate, including humans. And it's only seen in the embryo stages. In human embryos, there are gill slits that disappear and actually become part of the back of your throat. And they're used in these ancient invertebrates as filtering devices. They suck water in the mouth, and they filter it. The water goes through these slits and out the sides of the organism, and they filter feed. They filter the water as it goes through the slits. There's a little screen that catches small particles so they can eat it. That's how these early invertebrate chordates eat. They're filter feeders. In fish, those things evolve into gill slits. You also see the gill slits in amphibians. And in reptiles, birds, and mammals, they disappear and become part of the back of the throat. But they're always there. They are seen in the embryo stage. So you had gill slits when you were just a little tiny baby in your mom's tummy. You remember when you had gill slits?
Yeah.
No, you don't, because your brain hadn't formed it.
That's weird, because I do remember that.
It is weird. Also, there is a post-anal tail. What does post-anal mean? That means the tail starts behind the anus, where the feces comes out. Doo-doo, number 2.
I have a post-anal tail.
All vertebrates have a post-anal tail. Our tail doesn't develop very much, You can still see the tailbone, though. It's what evolutionary scientists refer to as a vestigial structure, but it's still there. Are you getting any of this, Taylor? Yeah. There's a little tailbone you see here. It's scientifically known as the coccyx. Coccyx.
It's like in a long quality drones, coccyx.
As an embryo, if you look at a human, listen. As an embryo, if you look at a human, the tail is real long. And it becomes shorter and shorter and shorter as the human embryo forms. So those are the major ones. Right here. Dorsal nerve cord, notochord, pharyngeal pouch, post-anal tail. You can also throw in muscle blocks as a characteristic if you'd like. You see muscle blocks, repeated blocks of muscle. If I were to take my shirt off, you would see the six-pack abs.
Only 6? I think you're mistaking yourself with me.
Which are muscle blocks. And the muscle blocks run all the way down your body. There's blocks of muscle in between your ribs.
Yeah,
Muscle blocks in your back. Muscle blocks in your abs. So these muscle blocks are chordate characteristics. Yes, Chris?
So as an embryo, do we have all of these?
Yes. We have all these as an embryo. Some of them disappear into our adulthood. And we'll see that in every organism. So those are the chordate characteristics. Let's talk about the invertebrate chordates that never form the backbone. They're all invertebrate chordates are marine animals. That means they live in salt water. So those lancelets are saltwater, Bennett. You were asking that earlier. Saltwater. There are 23 different species of lancelets, 1,250 different species of tunicates. We'll show you what these lancelets and tunicates look like. Let's talk about the lancelets first. Lancelets burrow their bodies into the sand in shallow seas. They swim down and they look like a knife. They're called lancelets because a lance is a knife.
Like a knife.
You lance something.
Oh, I thought they were like,
And it looks like a surgeon's knife. And these things knife through the water and kind of swim like fish, and they'll bury themselves down in the sand, stick their head up out of the sand, and they have these little tentacles that stick out, and they're filter feeders. They suck the water in, and then it comes out the sides, and they filter the water. Yes,
Do they
Greg?
have like eye sockets or any of those ears I can like sunset?
I don't know if they have eyes. I want to say no on the eyes. Yes, Bennett?
You know, you said like marine lives in the ocean.
Yes, marine means ocean.
Don't some bull sharks, like, aren't they able to swim in fresh water?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
So
I saw that on Shark Week.
So,
there are organisms that can do both.
do both. Okay.
Yeah.
I can.
Quick.
Great, I'll we need a move.
Those sharks will be freshwater and marine organisms. So here's what these things look like. This is kind of gravel at the bottom of some tank. And here you see them sticking their heads out. And they'll suction in water and filter feed. Video footage.
Heck yeah.
how do you get video footage of these?
The next evolutionary step was probably the inch-long Amphioxus, which may have developed the precursor to the modern spine. You can see it here as a narrow yellow cord that runs along its back a bit to the right.
That's the notochord.
From this unassuming beginning came the 60-foot long backbone of the mighty blue whale. And the backbone of the even mightier dinosaur.
64-foot background.
It's a lot of feet.
Pretty long.
It's quite crazy. On my
fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is it visible?
So let's talk about the tunicates.
Got no mouth.
Tunicates are sessile as adults.
Which means they can't move.
They don't move. They only show the chordate features in the larval stages. All the other chordate features disappear except for the gill slits. Food particles are trapped in a mucus net and moved into the stomach where digestion takes place. Basically, the way they work is they suck in water through a mouth, what we call an in-current siphon, and then they filter the water, and then they shoot the water out through an ex-current siphon. All this stuff you see, the tubular nerve cord and the notochord and the tail, they all disappear as this thing forms. And it basically kind of turns this way and anchors itself onto something. They'll often suction themselves onto the bottom of the ocean, onto rocks. Sometimes they're on the underside of a dock. And they'll maybe be on the bottom of a boat. Yes, Graham?
When you say that only the larval stages have like the chordate features,
Yes.
does that just like fall off, or does it like?
They slowly disappear, just like the tail gets shorter
How long
and
do they
shorter,
live
and
for?
eventually it's gone.
How long do they live for?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know how long they live.
Maybe
So here's what it looks like in the adult form. The gill, like I say, the gill slits remain. They do have a heart down here. This is a heart and blood vessels. Their heart is kind of weird. The heart will pump in one direction for a while, and then it'll change directions and pump blood in the other directions. It's got a changing direction heart, dual direction heart.
So I guess they're closed circulatory.
Closed circulatory system.
Are they
Now these, what's that?
Are they sessile?
Yes.
Are they what? Sessile, yeah, sessile. They're stuck in one location. Now, they're called tunicates. We call them tunicates because they have this protective layer on the outside called a tunic. It's really hard. It's kind of like tire rubber. It's very hard for a fish or something to chew through it. And that's how they protect themselves. So we call them a tunicate. What's that?
Is that what we call it?
Tunicate.
You just said that.
You said it when you asked questions. Alright.
Let's look at some of the things about a tunicate.
Tunicates are covered with a layer of tissue called a tunic,
Stop throwing stuff.
which protects the animal from predators. The heart of the tunicate is unusual because it pumps blood in one direction for several minutes and then reverses direction. Water enters the animal at the top of the body through the incurrent siphon, the animal's mouth. During filter feeding, food is trapped by mucus secreted in a ciliated groove. Food is filtered out, and dissolved oxygen is removed from the water in the pharynx, which is lined with cilia and has gill slits. Water leaves the body of the tunicate through the excurrent siphon on the side of its body.
Now, if you mess with these things, they will shoot water out both siphons at once. And so they got the name sea squirt because of this. You may have heard of a sea squirt before. If you mess with these things or pull them off of the bottom of a boat or something, they'll shoot water out. And it squirts water.
How big are these?
They're anywhere from that big to like this big. Here's a look at one of them. Looks like a heart.
When you pull them off, like say you pull them off the bottom of the boat, can they reattach themselves?
I don't know.
You're gonna name sea squirt.
I don't know. Probably. I would guess they probably could. You guys quit throwing stuff, okay?
Especially.
There's no reason to do that.
Someone called for
Video footage.
There are many different kinds of sea creatures. Often these animals are very specialized. They have adaptations that help them survive. adaptations may mean that animals look different from what we might expect. Even complex animals can look more like plants. This is a tunicate. And so is this. Tunicates are animals. In fact, they are fairly complex animals, complete with a nervous system, a digestive system, and a circulatory system. Tunicates are invertebrates. That means they have no backbones, but they do have a nerve cord, and during part of their lives, they have something resembling a backbone called a notochord. This may mean that tunicates are a link between invertebrates, animals without backbones, and vertebrates, animals with backbones. Tunicates spend part of their lives as tiny larvae floating through the oceans. Eventually, they permanently attach themselves to a hard surface. After they settle, tunicates lose the notochord and begin to look a lot like a bag or balloon.
Are those a lot of tunicates?
That's a bunch of them, yeah.
Is it just luck?
Tunicates have two openings in their bodies called siphons. Ocean water is drawn in the larger opening, and the tunicate extracts food and oxygen. Water and waste products are expelled through the smaller opening. Tunicates have good sensory abilities and enough muscle power to close up their siphons if they are molested. They are easily overlooked. We might mistake them for plants. But they are complicated animals specially adapted to life in the sea. They are tunicates.
Great! That's about as good as you can make a 3-minute video on tunicates.
That was
Yes.
pretty good.
How do they get their color?
Chemicals that are produced in their body. Usually bright colors like that indicate that the organism is poisonous if you eat it. And fish kind of stay away from that. So they probably have in their tunic some poison. So if a fish tries to eat it, it'll not only have a hard time chewing through the tunic, but it'll get sick. And so fish avoid it. Yes?
Are they always like in groups like that purple one?
I don't know. No, I wouldn't say they're always in groups, but usually the way these things reproduce is they release sperm into the water, and a male will release sperm and a female will release eggs, and the sperm and eggs will come together and form larvae, and the larvae can swim around, but they'll attach to an open surface. So if there's like a piece of rock and there's one tunicate living on it doing well, there's probably room for other ones to attach there too. And so it ends up being a colony or a group. Other questions?
So either the tunicate or the
Lancelet?
Yeah,
Yeah, an enlarged end of the spinal cord, which we call a brain if it's in the head region. Brain is, there's not really a scientific definition of brain. It's a large collection of nerves.
Does it have both of them or just the lancelet?
I know the lancelet does. I don't know how the other one works. It might be in your reading. Read it tonight, it might say. Yes?
Can we dissect the tunic?
No, we won't be dissecting those, but we will do a fish, which is the next section.
I really did a fish before.
We're going to do a fish.
I thought we did like 8th grade.
Okay, that's all I've got for today. So, 27.1.2 tonight. Could be a quiz again tomorrow. Invertebrate Chordates, will us out.